Morning, everybody. We were not live yesterday. We do Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Yesterday there was some news as well. I believe Fed Chair Powell spoke, which made for unfavorable trading conditions. Today we're looking at the NAS. Let's open up a second window here. Look at oil for a second. I'll focus on NAS today. We did have a news drop at 5:30. Now we're seeing that was the 5:30 news drop. We saw New York Open tap the previous week's DR. This is the 15-minute. And the 5-minute. Right now we currently have a red box. We have a downside expansion model. And today is Tuesday, so since we are bullish, we usually look for Tuesday to set the lows, which it has. It swept Monday. Just waiting for confirmation to see if this thing wants to retrace up higher or if it wants to break the range and then continue lower. Currently we do have, even though it's a bullish market, and on the daily time frame we are bullish, we are getting more of a bearish sentiment during this session currently. Like I said, downside expansion model. And we have a red box, retracement coming up most likely into this fair value gap. And we'll see if price can break this and head up higher, or if we get that confirmation to the to the downside. And again, these are key points that the indicator paints out for you. Having a tough time getting over that fair value gap currently. Now, depending on what kind of trader you are, you might not want to do counter trend trading in general. So even though, like I said, we are getting a bearish sentiment during this session, we are still bullish on the higher time frames, continuously breaking higher highs on the NAS. Let's take a look at US 500 as a comparison, see if there's any divergence happening. Keep in mind, guys, if you're following along, make sure you're in a demo account. This is for educational purposes only, as Fractal Effects is a educational website. We are not financial advisors, and this is not financial advice. But we are here to teach you probabilities and to make well-informed decisions. So right now, US 500 has not taken out any of the lows. Has not taken out, I believe that's the 5:30 news. Hasn't even taken out the news candle. So extremely bullish still. This might be a good indication that it wants to push up, which means that NAS might be gassed out down here and might also want to push up. But again, we're going to wait and see how NAS does in this fair value gap. When you see this kind of divergence on sister pairs, they're usually pausing one market so they can take more liquidity, liquidity being the lifeblood of the market, and then pushing up. Market also doesn't like straight lines. Another reason we want to see it get above this fair value gap first. Otherwise it could still run all these lows and take out the straight line. We also had a broken model in London. We got a downside confirmation, retracement, but then it kept going and it broke the other side. Now if we had a downside expansion from there, we could trust the downside expansion model more. But the fact that we have a broken model, we want to see what it does here, because it could actually go back up, especially with all this divergence. That is pretty big divergence happening right now between US 500. It's almost an opposite model here, opposite pattern. On the TDI, we are below the 50. Now we're right up against that fair value gap. I want to see if it gets over. US 500 also giving us some straight lines here. Having a tough time getting over that. That is pushing through. It's NAS on the left, US 500 on the right. We're just using 500, which is the stronger pair currently, just to see if we can find any divergence. US 500 also bounced off that 238. Now the 15-minute candle is bouncing off the 20 EMA. Let's throw in a Fibonacci here. Once you know what zone and what area to look in, then adding in all these extra tools just helps. 61% is right into that fair value gap, so I want to see as it gets above this. I want to see what it does in this fair value gap. If we see resistance and it wants to push down and stay with the downside expansion, or if it wants to jump over this and then head up. This is where the big decision of the day will be made. Whether or not this market moves up or moves down. It'll be between 61 and 79 at this fair value gap. Now that's London's fair value gap. Keep in mind on the 5-minute that's being extended through. New York's fair value gap, right there, you can see it, is actually within London, that smaller red line. So price is drawn here. But whether or not this market goes up or down is going to be decided right here. And that's what we're trying to do, guys. We're trying to create high probability chances of getting the direction correct. Too many people jump in at New York Open or when they see this kind of rejection. This doesn't mean anything. It could bounce here and just take out these bottoms. Relative equal lows. Since Tuesday sets the low of the week, if we're in a bullish market, we've pretty much done that. We have swept, I believe that's Friday. That's Monday. We've swept Monday's lows. And even Friday's lows. US 500 still up there. Seeing a little bit of resistance in that fair value gap now. But we are on the other side of that consequence encroachment, midpoint. We do have a pretty big range. So it's got a long ways to go before we get any bullish confirmation. I'd like to see the range break. Within this session, we'll be streaming until 9 a.m. If we're not in a trade by that time, we're done for the day. Keep in mind this is day trading, not everyday trading. So the situation is not perfect, if the conditions are not perfect, we don't see all of our confluences, we don't take a trade. Now we're pushing through this fair value gap, heading for that main one where the decision will most likely be made. Between 61, 79, I want to see if the bodies close in here, or if they actually start pushing through, bouncing off the consequence encroachment of this fair value gap and start heading up, which will stay in alignment then with US 500. 500 being the stronger one. This might have gassed out, taken all the liquidity that it needed to continue. Then we might go and break the top, but I want to see what happens in this fair value gap. Now it's just about being patient. And there are traders out there that try and take small bursts. If they know it's going to go up into this fair value gap, then they'll take a trade here and try to ride it up, but you never know when it's going to turn. This could be a short retracement and head back down. We're still in this fair value gap. We're already getting rejection here. Never take the short trade. Always wait to see what the bigger move is going to be. There's always going to be a small move which sets up the bigger move. We're still on the other side of the consequence encroachment of that fair value gap. US 500. Now slowly making that move to take out the tops, which is another telltale sign that this thing might want to push up. This is extremely bullish versus NAS. So once again, they paused this market to sweep all the liquidity here. Now let's see if US 500 is strong enough to pull NAS all the way to take out the tops. US 500 very close to taking out the previous highs. We're now closing on the other side of that fair value gap. We want to see a run into New York fair value gap right here. Again, keep in mind, guys, this is all painted out for you with the indicator. There's London's opening fair value gap that extended through, and there's New York's. They're overlapping. So we want to see price draw at least into here, near the 61% to 71%, and then see what it does here. Slowly making a move up. US 500 just took out the previous highs. Getting some rejection here on NAS. Just a bit of a waiting game now. NAS hitting the top of that consequence encroachment, pushing through. US 500 took that top. I kind of paused there. NAS is still on the other side of that fair value gap. I'd like to see it push through. We can make a more well-informed decision up here than we can down here. We see a short retracement and then a push. These are the moves that are not the most optimal moves and harder to get into. Then we might as well wait for a confirmation short and then another retracement. Now still just playing inside that fair value gap. Getting a lot of wicks. 2 minutes 44 seconds for this candle close. US 500 swept installed. Now keep in mind this could actually pull this down as well. We want to see what happens. That's why this is a better place to make that well-informed decision. All we're seeing here is rejection, rejection. Now it's pushing a little lower into that fair value gap. We are still below the 50% PD array. That's why I'd like to see it get up a little higher before it sells. We're technically still in buy territory than sell territory. We want to see it get above the midpoint right there, painted out by the gray line. If it's going to truly sell, this would be a better place for us to get that sell. Or buy low, sell high. So right now this is now the PD array switches. This becomes premium when you're trying to sell. And this is discount. Slowly we're pushing through that fair value gap now. Let's see if it takes out any of these lows. 3 minutes 20 seconds, 30 seconds before this candle closes. US 500 also dancing in a fair value gap right now. The fact that we're closing above it is a sign that this might want to continue up, therefore pulling this up. Now it's trying to slowly push through that fair value gap again. 1 minute 49 seconds left on 5. US 500 rejecting from that fair value gap, trying to drive higher. Again, I'd like to see Nas get on the other side of this fair value gap and see if we're going to be truly bullish and head up, or if it's going to gesticulate, use this to push down, dragging US 500 with it. We're still in buy territory. Once we get above that, that's when we'll be slowly, at least in the zone, to look for sells. Now it's driving a little higher now in that fair value gap. We want to see it break that zone. US 500 just broke the previous highs again. Now we're slowly starting to see the hand. Always wait till the markets show their hand. We got one big wick down here. We got US 500 bouncing off this fair value gap, pushing higher. I believe it's going to drag it at least into this fair value gap. Little under an hour left in the stream. Let's see if we can't get a good move out of NAS. US 500 driving higher. This is obviously the stronger pair. Slowly getting a confirmation here now. Let's see if this candle closes and gives us a confirmation on US 500. Two minutes to close. Let's see if we get a confirmation here, bullish confirmation with the US 500. Nas driving higher. Right into the, come on, right into the New York fair value gap. So that's the consequence encroachment of the New York fair value gap. Again, guys, this is all algorithmic. This is not a coincidence. Markets are magnetically drawn to these zones where the market's only doing one of two things. It's either taking out liquidity or filling in inefficiencies. So what did we do here? We took out liquidity. We took out all the bottoms, all the equal relative lows. Now the next thing it needs to do is fill in an inefficiency, which is this fair value gap here. Now what does it do from here? Now it's got to take out more liquidity. But that could be this liquidity or this liquidity. That's why this is the deciding factor. This fair value gap is the deciding factor of where this market's going to go next. And we have to make a well-informed decision and pick a direction. We are now officially above that 50% PD array. We're in sell territory. So it could go either way. We have all these equal relative lows here that it might want to sweep. Or it'll take out the highs created at open and follow in suit with US 500. US 500 already gave us a bullish confirmation. And it's already reached 0.5 standard deviations. I want to see it retrace back into one of our key zones. And then push up again. And in doing so, we'll most likely pull NAS with it. We're seeing some rejection here. We're now at the consequence encroachment of both London and New York. I want to see where this candle closes. If it closes above, if we see any immediate retracement now that we're in the golden zone between 61 and 79, or if this thing pushes through. Slowly getting some rejection. We'll take a look at NAS on the 15 for a second. Again, right in that fair value gap, there's one on, this is the New York fair value gap painted on the 15. So the 3 time zones we look at, 1 minute, 5 minute, and 15, the indicator paints out those fair value gaps. There's London's fair value gap. So it's got a lot of boundaries to get through, a lot of resistance. We want to see, if we're looking for a buy, we usually want to see little to no resistance. So we've also tapped, or close to tapping, the 238 on the 15, which is another rejection point. Excuse me. Look at that rejection right from that zone. Let's see what US 500 is doing. Now this could just be because of the retracement. I want to see at least a couple more candles reject in either direction to let us know which way we're going. "45 minutes left in the stream." This is one of the reasons these big ranges are not that favorable. It takes us a while sometimes to get a confirmation on either side. So New York session for US 500 is completely above London. Whereas for NAS, we're right in London. New York pretty much formed, or rather London is within New York. So these two are telling two different stories right now. This one wants to push up. This one is having a lot of resistance, or facing a lot of resistance, but it might get pulled up with it. We're now back below the 50, which is now back to buying territory. This is why it's important to just wait for confirmation. So for US 500, we do have that confirmation. And we're seeing a retracement now. Now this retracement might match exactly where we stop here on the NAS as well. The key zones for US 500 now be the top of the range here. You can get rid of this. Could be the fair value gap. Most likely it'll be a retracement right between 2 and 3 standard deviations, which might tap this fair value gap and push up, but we'll see. That's ideally what we would like to see. A little under 45 minutes left in the session. Seeing some signs of rejection on NAS. Still within that fair value gap. Ideally, we'd like to see these match up, where US 500 hits a key point and rejects, and NAS hits either the consequence encroachment, maybe even sweeps this, but we want to see a definitive rejection to let us know that this thing actually wants to go up. Both of them want to go up, or if NAS is going to pull US 500 down. As mentioned before, the decision was going to be made right here. Are we going to push this way, or are we going to push that way? Will US 500 push, or pull rather I should say, NAS up, or is NAS going to push US 500 down? Again, two very opposite patterns. There we go. US 500, finally doing that retracement. We want to see displacement candles. It's now hitting the top of the range, but I'd like to see it retrace a little deeper into this fair value gap here. And even lower, possibly. A fair value gap there. It's already filling in one fair value gap here. Between 2 and 3 standard deviations. NAS back in the fair value gap. Let's see if it rejects off the consequence encroachment. Seeing some rejection for NAS. We always want to see a few candles reject, not just one. And again, if market leaves without us, it leaves without us. We want to make well-informed decisions. For everybody practicing in a demo account, you should not have pulled any triggers. This is not our perfect high probability chance of getting in yet. US 500, we have a confirmation, bullish confirmation. We're looking for a decent retracement, rejection, and then an extension. NAS, we're bouncing off of the fair value gap, still no confirmation to either side. And we're sitting back in that fair value gap. This thing could push down from here, or it could continue up and follow in suit with US 500. We'll see. And most of the time, that's what trading is, just patiently waiting. Pattern recognition, following the markets, looking for confluence. A little over a half hour left in our stream. US 500 still pushing a little lower. I'd like to see it enter at least this fair value gap and see what it does here. Seeing a little bit of rejection there. We want to see at least a few candles. US 500 slowly pushing down. NAS also making another attempt. Ideally, we don't want to see NAS get below this red line if we're going to stay bullish. And then that'll be in alignment with the story US 500 is telling, and we'll see rejection happening. We're having a second candle rejection here off the top of the range. We have 50 seconds left before that candle closes. Let's see where the body closes. Hit the top of the consequence encroachment of that fair value gap again with NAS. And we're right in that fair value gap. Getting rejection. Let's see if it pushes through or if it's going to turn around here. I want to see another candle at least. This candle struggling. I want to see a shoot. Okay, pushing down. Tapping the 20 EMA. NAS dipping a little lower. If NAS closes and stays above this red line, or at least the body I should say, that'll be a telltale sign that this thing wants to push back up. And then that might be the retracement. We're back now not only into this fair value gap, but inside New York's fair value gap. This is a huge key zone. We're also hitting the 50. If either of these two are going to push, it's going to be from here. The top side I meant. US 500 rejecting off the New York fair value gap. Two minutes 43 seconds left for this candle close. Let's see if we close in this fair value gap and above this consequence encroachment. And let's see if this thing pushes back up. 1 minute, 57 seconds left. US 500 pulling back up over the consequence encroachment of the fair value gap. NAS still in the fair value gap. A little under 30 minutes left for a session. $17 seconds left. Candle close. US 500 still in that fair value gap. Same thing with NAS. I think this next candle is going to be a telling one. Ideally, we want to see displacement candles to the upside if it's going up, and or if we start seeing slow candles drawing down. Making one more attempt. But again, we're seeing the rejections happening. Now let's see if it wants to push up or down from here. This is where a lot of key confluence points converge. We're sitting in the New York fair value gap, bouncing off the 50 EMA. Down here, we're actually still above the 50 EMA. Same thing with NAS sitting in a fair value gap here, bounced off the New York and London fair value gap. That's why we saw this big draw big retracement. But let's see if it wants to push through now. I want to see displacement candles. Keep in mind, when the market's ready to push, when the market makers are ready to push the market, do it quickly. They don't want to sit in certain zones for too long. That's why we wait for displacement candles. Not quite the displacement candles we wanted to see. I want to see this candle now get above at least this one to show us that this thing actually wants to push up. So far we got 1 rejection, 2 rejection. I want to see at least 3 rejections from this point to let us know that this thing wants to push up. Otherwise it could just drop out still. 20 minutes left in the stream. This is why we're seeing wicks to both sides. We're trying to engineer more liquidity here. Trying to muddy the waters as far as which direction it wants to go, but right now, majority of the confluence is telling us this thing wants to push up from here. We already have a bullish confirmation on US 500. We're at a key confluence point right here where we're getting a lot of rejection. I want to see where this candle closes. In NAS, we're having a tough time getting out of that fair value gap. So hoping to get confirmation on NAS that aligned with US 500, but we're still sitting in the range. Not to mention we have all these relative equal lows right here. Market does not like straight lines. And it's creating even more here. 1, 2, 3. Could there be one more wick down before we see any kind of push up? Yes. You could potentially see that. At the same time, they're holding US 500 right in this fair value gap. $43 left in the candle close. Let's see if this closes above that consequence encroachment. We have 3 candles rejecting. US 500 making one last push. We're still bouncing off the 50 EMA. Got 14 minutes left in the live stream. Looks like it's gassing out here. But I want to see it get above this consequence encroachment. Otherwise I could just use this to push down. Excuse me. Three minutes to candle close. This candle closes above this consequence encroachment. That's a telltale sign this thing wants to push up. Eventually you do have to pull the trigger and make a move and decide when you've seen enough confluence. So win or lose. This area, I believe, is the optimal trade entry based off of probabilities and confluence. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. But it's about making a well-informed decision. Remember, we want to see this close above this consequence encroachment. One minute 45 seconds left. Closing of this candle. Got 12 minutes left in our stream. 1 minute till candle close. Slowly below that consequence encroachment again. US 500 making one more push. US 500 still in that same fair value gap, having a tough time getting out of it. Again, I want to see a candle close above the consequence encroachment, the midpoint of that fair value gap. 10 minutes left in our stream. Let's see if we can't get a push before the stream ends. Looks like NAS is making that push. When you see this much gesticulation happening before 9 o'clock, and this much muddying of the waters, of bouncing from here to here to here to here, you want to aim for the low-hanging fruit, because we want to essentially be out of the market by like 9 o'clock. As we go into, and sorry, I keep saying 9 o'clock, I mean noon for New York time. So that's the push. I believe we're going to get, now again, when I say low-hanging fruit, that could be just the recent highs formed, or at the very most, range high. That looks like the displacement candle. I believe this thing wants to push up now. For NAS, it still has quite a bit of resistance to go through. It has to get through New York fair value gap, London fair value gap, the golden zone. That doesn't mean that it won't push through it or couldn't push through it. It just means that this gives the market makers a lot more opportunity to, again, muddy the waters, engineer new liquidity. make you think it's going to go in one direction over the other. About 6 minutes left in our stream. Just checking out the 15-minute. I think we're going to see a bit more gesticulation. As mentioned before, I think it wants to push up from here. If we're wrong, we're wrong. I think all the telltale signs are there to take out at least this high, and then potentially this high, and follow in suit with US 500, which has already taken the highs. And will most likely continue to tap its high. Four minutes left in the stream. As much as we want to see, again, displacement candles, this is slowly eking its way up. 3 minutes left in our stream. We're still on the other side of the consequence encroachment of that fair value gap. 2 minutes left. Very close to 9 o'clock, guys. Thank you for joining us. Again, we will be doing live trading Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays to promote Fractal Effects and our strategy. If you know anybody that could benefit from our education, our training, please feel free to send them the link. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow around the same time, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. And thank you for joining us on the stream. Have a good start to your day.